Hello, everybody. Welcome to Common Censored. I'm Lee Camp, joined by Eleanor Goldfield,
Hello.
and we got a bunch of stories for you. We're gonna dig into some of what's going on in the world as we spiral towards an end times that I hope will have margaritas. So I'm fairly hopeful. And I thought I'd start with the dominant story in our mainstream media, and obviously it is hugely influential to everyone around the globe, I suppose, since it puts us closer to nuclear Armageddon. But that is that Joe Biden and the Biden administration have begun blaming other people for what's going wrong in their proxy war with Russia. I've done multiple videos, so I don't need to rehash it all, but on the U.S. helping to create this proxy war, wanting it, and also how it seems to be collapsing, at least the U.S. Plans for it seem to be collapsing in the way that many of us saw from basically the beginning. And as I covered the other day, now even Darth Vader himself, Henry Kissinger, has called for, he's 99 years old. He's a ball of silly putty and like 3 bones. And he called for Ukraine to cede some territory and end the war not because he gives a shit about any human beings, but because he thinks it could harm the U.S. empire to continue along the lines of this proxy war. But now, here is the latest. Joe Biden, and when the empire has to back away from a stance, there's going to be a blame game. So Joe Biden has begun blaming Zelensky for ignoring U.S. warnings. He said Friday that his Ukrainian counterpart, Zelensky, didn't want to hear American warnings ahead of Russia's invasion of his country. I know a lot of people thought I was exaggerating, Biden said at a fundraiser, referring to his forewarning of the possibility of a Russian attack, but I knew we had the data to sustain the assessment. Okay, few things. First of all, the reason everyone didn't believe you is because America fucking lies your goddamn faces off endlessly. You have lied about every fucking war we've ever been in. And so that's why people were like, it doesn't sound, baby, they lie a lot. They're big fucking fat liars. So it makes sense that people thought he was lying. But beyond that, what would have been the difference if Zelensky had said, oh, you're right, Russia's about to invade? Would anything have changed?
Well, the U.S. has also been desperate for Russia to do this. And has been trying, and that's why NATO keeps encroaching. That's why the U.S. has been poking the Russian bear basically since World War II. The U.S. is desperate for this to happen. So this kind of switch is basically just to lay the groundwork for the U.S. to kind of back away from a quagmire and be like, we had nothing to do with this. Zelensky just didn't listen to our suggestions. So that's a bummer for them, right?
Yeah. And the reason Biden and them did know correctly that Russia was going to invade is because they were like, what they weren't telling us is they were like, we know they're going to invade because we've been giving those Nazis lots of guns and missiles, like lots. They've killed 15,000 people in the Donbass region over the past 8 years, thanks to our guns and missiles, etc. We have NATO training centers in or on the border of Ukraine. So really, Biden was like, yeah, we know that Russia's going to invade because we've totally tried to get them to invade for fucking years.
Yeah.
For fucking years. And that's what they weren't saying. That was the quiet part next to the loud part. But this blame game means something, honestly. It's not just hilarious to watch this fucking, and of course, very serious too, but to watch this implode in the way it is, causing economic ramifications across Europe, across the United States, gas prices shooting through the roof, inflation, which is not just connected to the proxy war, but has a bunch of other reasons as well. Also, the fact that the U.S. can't actually tend to or care to or give a shit about their own people. That also has kind of caused Biden to have, what is it, the lowest approval rating in fucking decades or whatever. So now they've started this blame game, which shows that the U.S. is actively looking for strategies to back out of this proxy war that they've created.
Yeah, which is very U.S. We basically start a war and then we tiptoe back out of it while continuing to make money off of it, but then we can kind of watch from the sidelines. It's a really nice game. You kind of like, it's like yelling fire in a crowded theater, and then you just get to like watch the show go down, but you don't have anything like, you're like, oh, this is kind of nice. You just grab your popcorn and you're like, yeah.
You back away and slink out the side door and you go, let's see what happens. This is interesting. The U.S. and we've done this more kind of directly in many countries. I mean, we completely fucking imploded Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, Syria, and then we step back and go, that's crazy what's going on over there. Did you see that shit? Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, like, we took no responsibility for Libya. It's open
air, like, slave market.
There's open air slave markets. Fucking open air. And I find it funny that open air is always connected to that, but still open air, because it is crazy here. It's like if they had a slave market down in a basement somewhere, you'd be like, well, people gonna slave, But when it's open, when there's signs at the farmer's market,
right. Like get your sweet potatoes and your slaves.
Buy your people over here. Yeah. Get a free sweet potato if you buy a person. But it's true. The open air makes it worse. But the one thing I guess I don't like about it, it implies people would be fine with it if it weren't open air. If it was like, there's now quiet slave markets, we're like, oh, well,
Well, that's what we call U.S. prisons. Those are the quiet slave markets.
True. Very true. Well, I have another article saying basically the same shit.
It has a different picture.
True. Dude, the latest thing now that all these articles do is they have a gripping headline, and in this case it's true. Sometimes it's bullshit, but a gripping headline like the one here. Biden blames Zelensky for ignoring U.S. warnings, and you get the two quotes. What is it? 2 sentences from Biden. Here's the entirety of the article. It's fucking 8 sentences. It's like my cat could have written this, and it's like you people are incapable of writing more than like a paragraph. It's because they know no one. People treat news now like we used to treat the Onion. You just read the headline and you go, okay, I got it.
I've never actually read an Onion article.
I rest my case.
Are there actually articles attached to the headlines?
There are articles. So I used to write for the Onion, but I used to just write headlines, and we were considered kind of the downtrodden. We were the hidden slave markets. We were the downtrodden because we weren't in the Onion office. We would just send in our headlines from afar and got paid $25. It was a slave market. But I kind of was like, well, I like this. I don't want to write those articles no one reads.
Well, yeah, because the joke, it's kind of like you start with a punchline, and then the article is like the build up to but no one wants to fucking read that once they've already gotten the punchline,
Right,
no one wants to work backwards.
It'd be like a comedian telling a joke and then going, okay, now for the next 15 minutes, I'd like to tell you how I thought up that joke.
Right. And no one cares.
True. However, I go back to my initial point, which is for actual news articles, I would prefer to have some kind of article there.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, we are going to, I'm trying to think, is there any new updates?
I'm sorry, somebody said that they can't hear me, and I apologize. It's because I'm sitting back. I'm lounging, and that's my bad. Sorry.
Folks, why won't you let Eleanor lounge? Why are you so anti-lounge?
I know, it's just...
You're the slave masters, you assholes.
I'm tired, so I'm like... But you know what? You're right.
She slowly fades farther and farther back, and then she becomes blurred out like the background.
Oh, it's happening. God, that's kind of how I feel. Yes. Sorry. I will do my best to sit forward. God, now I feel like I'm in choir practice when I was a kid. It's at the very edge of your seat.
Well, I don't know. You could scoot the chair. One commenter has a good point but I'll tell you why I often do it. They say, the only thing I'm sick of hearing right now is when people are talking about the diabolical crap that the ruling class are doing. I do that sometimes. Some of the times I say they, some of the times I say we. But the main reason I do it is because I want people to know that we are Americans criticizing America. I feel like that's important. Not that there can't be people outside of America criticizing America, but for me, it's important for people to know that I stand as an American pointing at America going, fuck this shit. And so I will sometimes say, like, we bombed Iraq, we destroyed Afghanistan, when in fact, of course, it's they. It's the ruling elite. It's the fucking corrupt, vampiric parasites that actually did it. And I'll make that clear as well. But so I waffle back and forth, but I do it intentionally. So.
And I think there's a point to be made about, these things are being done in the name of Americans, in our name. And that doesn't mean that, it's our fault, but it means that we have a role and an opportunity to dismantle the world's largest empire. And I think that sometimes hearing that makes us feel like we have more ownership in this and more responsibility. So.
So I've only bombed Iraq twice personally, but I will sometimes say we.
Amateur. I
know. I'm just kind of getting started, getting my feet wet, as it were, with the whole bombing of other countries. I like how in the ads though for weapons contractors, they like to pretend as if we're all doing this. Like you'll see ads for Raytheon and Lockheed Martin on fucking CNN and Fox News. They'll be like, a jet goes by and then it's like making the country safe, Raytheon. And it's like, are they thinking grandmas in Des Moines are going to buy a Raytheon jet? Is that why there's ads? No, there's fucking ads so they can own CNN, right. So they can tell CNN, don't fucking talk about the weapons contractors. So, but those ads seem to be implying like, fucking get on the phone. This sounds kind of good. I want an F-35. That sounds nice. I could put it next to the above ground pool out back. I think we have room. It'll be up on blocks like the car back there.
F-30, F-30 can't fucking fly anywhere.
That's true. The F-35 jet up on cement blocks, no wheels. Where'd you get that? I saw an ad, late night TV. I really shouldn't have picked it up.
QVC.
QVC. It was fucking Joy Behar was selling it on QVC, I think. Okay, so let's go on to our next topic, and I'm gonna let you lead this one. This is pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share this with y'all because I'm very stoked to be a part of this new book called Building Power While the Lights Are Out: Disasters, Mutual Aid, and Dual Power. And this is a book that's been put out by Rebel Hearts Publishing. You can pre-order it. Edited by Jimmy Dunson, and there are some fucking phenomenal humans that are a part of this, including Carla Bergman, Scott Crow, folks from the Mutual Aid Disaster Relief Collective,
Eleanor Goldfield,
Cleve Benally, who folks might recognize from Indigenous Anarchism, Malik Rahim, just a lot of rad humans. And I have a piece in there as well. And so this book is kind of talking about, it talks about mutual aid. It talks about how mutual aid is reimagining our relationships with each other. And
I know that we've gone through it
planet
before, but can you explain mutual aid again?
So mutual aid is the concept of solidarity rather than charity. And it is the concept that we are the people that we are helping, as opposed to charity, which is a top-down model. Charity requires people to be poor. Charity requires a capitalist framework, basically, to work. So mutual aid is the concept of a non-hierarchical system of support and aid. And the name comes from Kropotkin, who wrote a book called Mutual Aid, where he had basically studied nature and found that the predominant way that nature works is through mutual aid. And you can read more if you're curious about what mutual aid is and how it looks in a variety of different places and in different ways. You can check out this book. Again, you can pre-order it over at Rebel Hearts Publishing. I've also posted about it on my social media pages at Radical Eleanor on Twitter and Instagram. But yeah, do check that out. And it would make a great addition to a Radical reading club.
And I've only helped out or been a part of mutual aid a little bit. You're neck deep in it, while I, again, like bombing Iraq, I'm just dipping my toe in. But the times that I was there, it feels radical, and it feels because you're, like, you can tell people are like, wait, I just say I need groceries and then someone's like, here's some groceries. I don't understand. What's the trick? Are these AIDS tainted groceries? What happened? This can't be real. Because it really is just like neighbors being like, hey, let's help each other because we're fellow humans. Like, and that type of thing, that type of thought, that type of seed has to be crushed out throughout our society in a large way, which is why every time you see it in just a small way around society, it seems like something's wrong. Like you see like a community garden where it's just like, yeah, just come on in and you can pick some basil. And people are like, the basil is fucking tainted. They're trying to get people with basil. Like it always, there's always a moment, even just public libraries, you're like, wait, I can just take these books and you think I'll bring them back? And then you just run giggling into the street. Like,
so what you're saying is that you have books from the public library that are like 20 years overdue.
I'm actually 4'2", but I'm sitting on all the books I stole to be this tall.
But yeah, no, those are great points. And it really is. That's why, you know, in the description of this book, it really talks about reimagining our relationships with each other and the planet. Because capitalism is it's death programming. And so, you know, one of the most powerful things that we can do is kill the state in our minds. And before we can ever start working on dismantling empire, we have to dismantle it within our own minds. So I think some of these essays will be inspiring for folks in that same vein.
And just to give that site one last time, it's rebelheartspublishing.com, and the book is called Building Power While the Lights Are Out.
Yeah, and you can find the link to that on my Twitter and on my Instagram. And via my email list, if you happen to be part of that. If you're not, you can sign up at artkillingapathy.com. Just saying.
Well done. I feel like I always have to push you to give your links. So
yes,
thank you for
that took
for
a lot of
in.
effort to remember to do that. Thank you. Thank you for.
All right, let's do one more story before we head over to just rumble.com/Lee Camp, where it's free to continue watching. But I want to talk about this antitrust story. And by the way, the story's coming up. We also have a little something on Julian Assange and the person in charge of the next step in Assange's ridiculous torture program. And we're going to also talk about a couple other stories. But there are a couple of antitrust bills going through Congress right now that deserve some attention. And you and I rarely talk about bills because we understandably, I mean, because we're correct and we're always right, understandably are kind of fed up with federal electoralism, especially because it is bought off. It is so heavily bought off. And you know, people have heard me say this over and over again. We are an oligarchy. We are ruled by an elite business class, and nothing gets through Congress that does not support or benefit corporate America. So in that way, federal electoralism is a waste of your time. But that doesn't mean occasionally bills don't get put forward that could be a positive step in the right direction. But then the question is, will they actually get through? So this is one of those cases where we have a couple of bills that are positive, could be a step in the right direction. But there's some questions about them, which we can get more into that in a moment. But I guess, shall I read some remarks on what these bills are?
Sure.
All right. So, yeah.
Well, I was thinking we could also just briefly give folks an idea of what antitrust laws are.
Go for it. It's all you.
And basically, they're
antitrust is how I feel about Biden, right?
I know that's a weird name, but all of our laws have weird fucking names, like the right to work.
Well, no, I mean but the term antitrust has to do with having a company trust. It's a antiquated term, I guess.
True. So basically, the goal of an antitrust law is to regulate how businesses organize and basically try to prevent monopolies from happening. And we saw antitrust laws come up in the late 19th century. Also the early 20th century. There was the Sherman Act of 1890, the Clayton Act of 1914, the Federal Trade Commission Act of 1914. Do not fall asleep. I know that I fucking feel it.
Wait, did you see my head fading out of the video?
So, but basically, and they do this on purpose, right? This is why they call these things this, and then they're like, no one's ever gonna fucking read this shit because it's too fucking boring.
But they intentionally make them long.
Yes.
You know that if you get halfway into a 1,000-page bill in the middle, it's just some intern's like emails to his mom. Like they're just trying to fill pages so that the fucking congressperson gets them and is like, what? And it's just like they vote where they're told to vote because they don't want to read the shit.
Well, it's like folks might recall from I don't know if it was the last live stream we did, but I was looking at the EU bill that was, or the EU suggestion for a bill that would, basically make encrypted communication illegal. It was fucking pages upon pages. And so much of it was like saying the same thing, but rephrasing it in a more obtuse way. So you're like, wait, what does that mean? And then you fucking get a headache and then you pass out and you've only made it to page 2 and they're like, haha.
You're 15 pages in and you're like, this is Pig Latin. They wrote it in Pig Latin.
So basically the goal of these bills, which were actually good, for once, they basically made it so that things like price fixing and so-called collusive practices that unreasonably restrained trade were illegal. It restrict mergers and acquisitions of organizations that would lessen competition or tend to create a monopoly, like I mentioned. So basically, the idea is it's kind of like a weird thing because the goal is to try and promote that picturesque view of capitalism where it's all about competition and you have the choice to choose this guy or that guy, and that just means that it's natural and it's cool
anybody can succeed,
right? And so the antitrust law is kind of like a weird, like it's helpful, but at the same time it's really just trying to prop up that concept of capitalism, of competition, and like how we should all be at each other's throats because that's really what nature and what being alive is all about. So the antitrust laws make it so that that's easier because there aren't monopolies, and there have been a few politicians that have talked about it in the past few years about breaking up Amazon and breaking up, these big like Google, like tech conglomerates.
Yeah, I love the idea that right now Facebook doesn't have a monopoly. Yeah, like all those other big social media platform. Friendster is really knocking on the door of Facebook. Any day, my MySpace is going to take off.
So, there's also a little issue with antitrust laws as they exist, and what I'm not sure what it talks about enforcement in terms of these ones that are on the docket now.
See, that's one of the loopholes. What's the enforcement?
But a law is only as good as it is enforced. Yeah. So, for example, there are laws against insider trading. But
there's also laws against Ponzi schemes.
Yeah.
Please see the various segments I've done on how the
entire
stock market is a dictionary definition of a Ponzi scheme. Wow. Yeah, that law is really working.
So it's, again, like Lee said, like I'm not saying that these are pointless efforts to legislate against things like breaking up big tech, but I think that it is only as good as the enforcement. And so if this legislation doesn't include new commentary on the enforcement, then I gotta say
it's gonna say some amazing stuff, and then it's gonna say in fine print at the bottom, this will be enforced by Carl. Ted or Carl will show up.
Choose Carl.
I do. For some reason, Carl is the funny. It is the hard K. Hard Ks are funny. Carl is the funniest, like, simple name. You can get funnier if you get kind of more convoluted, if it's going to be enforced. It's going to be enforced by Dakota or something like. But then people start going, why the fuck did he pick that? Whereas Carl, they just know, he picked that as a random name. Anyway, so Carl or Dakota or Ted will show up at your door and they'll lightly knock on the Amazon headquarters door, and they'll go, excuse me, is Jeff here? Is Mr. Jeff Bezos? If he could he just split up his company, please? Thank you. Goodbye. Like, if that's the enforcement, then fuck it. But anyway, let me read what this is from antitrustsummer.com, which is a group of people trying to get these bills through. And you can, obviously, there's a lot more to learn about these bills. We're not saying we're covering everything. But, hope springs eternal. And maybe these are something to support for the moment until they've been loopholed the fuck out. So here's one of them. The Open App Markets Act, HR 5017. If for anyone who's not yet asleep, S2710.
Those are the Senate and House numbers of those bills. You're welcome, insomniacs.
Would protect developers' rights to tell consumers about lower prices and offer competitive pricing, protect sideloading of apps, open up competitive avenues for startup apps, third-party app stores, and payment services, make it possible for developers to offer new experiences that take advantage of consumer device features, give consumers more control over their devices, prevent app stores from disadvantaging developers, and set safeguards to continue to protect privacy, security, and safety of consumers. Now, all those things sound awesome. Yeah, let's do that. So,
was that the end of the sentence?
That's the end of the sentence. But does anyone?
I was waiting for a comma. However,
well, everyone knows. Everyone knows what the however is because they've probably seen you or me talk before. The however is A, will it get passed? B, will it be chopped up into 1,000 pieces and then served? It's like. It's like if you went to you wanted to catch a live animal, like you're going to catch like a live cat to take home and be your cat, and someone just handed you all the pieces of it and said, "Here you go."
Wow, that's dark.
That's what it ends up being in this situation?
Like a window into your childhood.
No, teenage years. But okay. All right, so here's another one: the American Innovation and Choice Online Act, HR 3816 S2992. would prevent dominant platforms from abusing their gatekeeper power. And by the way, that is how all of fucking iPhones, all of Facebook, all these app developers, it's like they create a walled garden and they make it impossible for developers that compete with them to do just about anything.
And you don't have a choice to use anything but.
Right. Or you do, but the competitor to iPhone or whatever, the competitor to the two phones that we're allowed to have in the United States.
You can build your own, but shit, I'm not that person.
I did build my own out of a speak and spell duct tape to a walkie-talkie, and let me tell you, it was a prime cell phone. It was awesome. It would prevent dominant platforms from abusing their gatekeeper power by favoring their own products or services, disadvantaging rivals, or discriminating among businesses that use their platforms in a manner that would materially harm competition on the platform. For example, by preventing another business's products or service from interoperating with the dominant platform or another business, by requiring a business to buy a dominant platform's goods or services for preferred placement on its platform, by misusing a business's data to compete against them, or by biasing search results in favor of the dominant firm. Yeah, that is basically how all of big tech works. And so, one, we said there has to be legit enforcement for this, or it's kind of meaningless. Two, we said that this bill needs to not be chopped up into 1,000 pieces and then the bloody carcass handed to the American people. Here, we did this for you, Congress says. And then three, and I can't remember if I started with A and B and now I'm on three, but thirdly, will it ever get through if it's not chopped up and with tons of loopholes? Would it ever get through our Congress? Because you have all the Republicans who outwardly would say like, yeah, we're going to do whatever corporations want, so fuck all of this. And then you have Democrats who would say, we stand for the people. But then behind closed doors, they go, yeah, we're going to do whatever corporations say, so fuck all of this. So if these things go through Congress and get more than, 20% of the vote, I'd be pretty surprised. The one thing that could help these is that right now, Congress kind of hates big tech because of because big tech has not fully censored people like me. They have largely censored people like me and you, but they have not fully, and that has infuriated Congress. So.
Yeah. So again, I appreciate these efforts. I think that it's always a good idea to be pushing for more fair and just realities. But I also think that it's important to be, what's the word? honest about the potential pitfalls, and also understand that the concept of antitrust is largely to make a nicer version of capitalism, and that in the long run ain't gonna cut it.
And if you want to learn a lot more about these bills, if you're not yet asleep, you can go to
Am I that boring?
No, not you. It's because I was reading the bills.
I feel like I'm just struggling to find my way to the end of the sentence because my brain is so right now.
We were joking about how the bills are boring,
okay,
not you.
I'm sorry.
Not you. Why do you think everything's about you? You can go to antitrustsummer.com if you want to learn more about these bills and how to help get them through without being chopped up and divvied into a million pieces. So feel free to do that. We are continuing with more stories, but that will only be at rumble.com/Lee Camp. It's free to watch over there. It's free to subscribe. It's free to comment over at rumble.com/Lee Camp. And the reason I'm doing that is because, yes, I still have a YouTube channel, but my main YouTube channel has been banned fully. Over 1,000 videos banned globally. So I can't trust them. I can't trust a lot of these platforms. So please go to rumble.com/Lee Camp. And while I do that, do you want to continue on whatever the story was?
Well, shouldn't I wait? I mean, I feel like if I cut people off, you want to give them a minute. Again, like the intermission thing. We should be playing intermission music.
Can you sing for us?
No.
Oh, no. Now I'm going to have to pay royalties for that.
No, you won't. It was off key.
Yay.
No.
See?